Hello friends, today we're going to cover DMC Peak of Combat 2.0. This is the global closed beta. Now the first thing I'll mention is that uh, there's been a lot of talk about how the combat is dumbed down, and I definitely agree. There are some cool things that you can do in this game, but the main problem is that the movesets are very small. You notice that's been a that's been a very growing trend lately. We just played Wo Long on this channel not too long ago, and I ended up flushing it because it was just boring. You know, there weren't enough moves, and everything was kind of just based around the parry. This game does not have that problem. It's just that they tried to simplify it, but honestly, I feel like it's even harder to play on on touchscreen now, just because you have to switch between characters and everything, and there's still a lot of manual dexterity involved. I actually think outside of the combat, this version of the game is a pretty much objective upgrade over the previous one. So, as you know, I played the Chinese 1.0 version for pretty much its entire lifespan. I spent a fair amount of money on it because I really loved the game. I don't regret what I spent because it was a nice little filler game for me in between larger console and PC games. However, there were a lot of problems with the 1.0 version that didn't involve the gameplay. The gameplay was quite good. It definitely was not as perfect as everyone said it was. I definitely feel like the game was a little stiff. Cancel timings were a little bit too like not lenient. They were very strict. So often at the end of animations, it didn't feel very good at times. Virgil in particular felt like he had a lot of things he couldn't cancel out of. The combat was good, especially for a mobile game. There really isn't anything that comes close. The only thing that comes close is PGR, which is a game I play daily on my kitty sitting streams. I do think that this game is still on par with PGR. I think the main thing that they need to do, if they're adamant about not wanting to give the characters more moves, is to make the characters as responsive as PGR, meaning that when you push a button and you push dodge, the dodge will come out pretty much in any frame, whereas right now it's kind of it's all over the place when you can cancel. So regardless of that, I'll tell you the main thing that makes this much better than the 1.0 version that is not involving combat, and that is the monetization. The monetization in the 1.0 version was honestly awful, mainly for one reason. There was no pity for anything for Dante and Lady, meaning that there were rotating banners. There were rotating banners for legendaries, but they took like a good 2 weeks or so to rotate. There were only two available in the rotation, and there was no pity at all. So you could really have spent like hundreds of dollars and not gotten anything. The only character that was worth pulling anything for, let alone spending money for, was Virgil, because Virgil was essentially a paid character. You could get him for free, but honestly, the rates were abysmal, so it was more likely you were probably funneling at least a little bit of cash into the game in order to get him. Now, what was unique about Virgil in 1.0 is that he had an entire pity system for everything, including Virgil himself and all of his weapons. So, towards the end of 1.0's lifespan, which I would say would probably be about maybe 7 months ago or so when they completely stopped updating the game. I ended 1.0 with pretty much like almost all his stuff unlocked. But if you liked playing Dante and Lady, they had barely anything to work with because you couldn't pity anything. It was ridiculous. It felt like 1.0 of this game, it felt like they had a really good combat team. Now, that combat was not perfect. There definitely were a lot of times where you wanted to cancel and you couldn't. And the game was a little bit too stiff, so you definitely had to play a little slower than you would have liked. But it just felt like they had nobody that actually knew how gacha monetization should work. The thing about gachas is, yes, you know, the goal is always to get whales to be addicted so that they spend lots of money and they basically fund the game for people like me that either can't spend any money or, more accurately, I'm more of a dolphin. I do cash on any service game I play, but as you all know, I don't really have a lot of disposable income, so I can't really spend that much. That's always the end goal, but you want to make sure that when people like your game enough to want to support it with real money, that they're getting their money's worth. So what they've done here is they've made it so every 30 summons that you do, I believe the pity actually goes up at some point. You'll get a guaranteed character. Now, the thing about this game that's actually really nice is the rates are actually pretty good. Right now, there's only 5 S-rank characters in the game. So you have a 2% rate, which is, compared to other games I played, KOF All-Star was 0.6 and also has a greatly diluted drop pool, so there was a lot of other junk that you could get instead of the characters that you want. You get a 2% rate, which for a game like this is pretty high. Obviously, one of the reasons that they're doing this whole character switching thing and the whole variant thing is because DMC does not have any active combatants. That's always been a problem. There's another game published by this same publisher called Mega Man X Dive, and Mega Man X, as you know, does not really have that many active combatants, characters that can actually fight. So they started getting around that problem the same way that they're doing here with the variants, and they have like crossovers from other parts of the Mega Man franchise and then collabs and stuff. So I imagine that's what they're going to do here, but 2% rate for an S-rank character is actually pretty huge. Most games like this, whether they're action-based like this, or PGR, or Honkai, or even if they're just like turn-based or something, generally for the best characters, you're looking at 1% or less. So they're giving you a 2% rate, and then you have a 13% rate for the purple characters. These guys are A rank. So these guys are actually not useless. I feel like the balancing is pretty good for the most part. I'd say the only good version of Virgil is these two up here. The A rank Virgils are pretty bad. Like this one, he has round trip, but in typical DMC fashion, he can't really use the force edge while the round trip is out. But because you can't switch weapons, he's basically just a round trip slave. So you put him out, you put the round trip out, and they will actually stay on the field while you tag out, which is actually pretty incredible design. A lot of tag-based games, if a character can put out like a persistent hitbox of some sort, like a projectile or something, then generally when you tag it disappears. So they actually thought of that, but he is just not very fun to play because it feels like his only purpose is to put the round trip out. But for the most part, A ranks are actually pretty competitive. Nero is actually pretty good just because he has streak, and you can use that to kind of get across the screen. He procs fire as well. His charge shot is pretty good. He also has an exceed that allows him to essentially roam and cancel. So don't sleep on the A rank characters. I think they did a relatively good job. My man Virgil kind of got the short end of the stick here because all these other characters are useful in their own regard, but Beowulf Virgil is just too slow. His moves take too long to come out. His launcher takes ages to come out as well, so it doesn't really feel like you can start combos with him. I mean, you can kind of continue them, but he doesn't really feel like a point character. Overall, I think that this monetization is way better, just because you can spend a decent amount of money on the game and actually get something. Now, what's cool they have here is, this is a secret seal. Now, I can't show you because I already bought it, as you can see. And what this does is it gives you a total of 100 summons, and at the end you can pick the one that you want. So, for instance, for me, I actually got Balrog Dante and Imperial Royal Guard Dante. I got both of them in the same banner. I think it was either him or Virgil. So that was like, I think like the 9th or 10th attempt. So I kept that one, which is actually a really good value. When this game comes back in open beta, meaning when they stop wiping the game, I would highly recommend doing that. So what you have here is, unfortunately, this is not a parry. This is not a pity. What it is you have a higher chance of getting them. If you look here. So what they've done is they've split it. I don't exactly know how the pity works here. Let's look at this really quick. So basically the pity is you have a 50% chance, which is pretty common. I know Honkai Impact 3 does that. You have 50% chance to acquire the S-Rank Hunter on the first one you summon. If you don't get them the first time, then you'll get them the second time, which is actually not bad because right now the drop pool is not really diluted. There's only like 11 characters in the game, so dupes actually work pretty well too. You get a bunch of passives for them. However, moves are not tied to dupes at all, so dupes will probably be more important later on in the game's lifespan. I imagine if you spent a bunch of money right now, you could probably get farther in the game just by the basis of having the more powerful passives, but there are no moves tied to them, so for now, there's not really an end game because a lot of things in the game are time gated, and obviously with the beta only being up for a few days, it's not really going to be possible to get to the end game. But I'm sure once the game is fully released for a while, maybe getting dupes will be a little bit more necessary. But overall, I got pretty much all the characters. The only character I didn't get was I didn't get this version of Lady, and I didn't get Navan and Dante. Those are the only characters I got. So the rates are actually quite good. If you want to look at the cash shop here, let's go ahead and go over that. Go to purchase. So they have these 99-cent things that you can buy, which give you 3 books that you can use to summon characters. So that's always worth buying if you're going to play the game every day. I think they have like a $5 package that you can buy that gives you them for a week. I actually feel like most of these are actually a pretty crap value. I don't remember how much 1280 yellow gems is. It's 20 bucks for that. So 20 bucks for that would be, let's see here. Let's do the math here. 20 bucks for this would give you 15 summons. So if you win the 50-50 pity, this would be about $40 for an S rank character, which for a gacha is actually not bad. I would say that's that's actually pretty damn good, all things considered. Now this one here, 3280, that is $50. That would be how many summons would you get off that? That would give you 30 summons. So yeah, for about 50 bucks, you could probably get. You would at least get to the 50-50 pity. So I guess it would be $100 to get them guaranteed. They also have monthly passes as well on 1.0 of this game. These are probably the best thing to buy if you're a Dolphin. Getting both of these is actually quite good, just because you're going to be getting 220 of the crystals a day. So that is, including dailies that you'll be doing, you'll be getting about 1 pull a day. So if you're getting 1 pull a day on both of these, that's actually pretty significant. That's probably going to be really useful for later on in the game, when dupes are more important. Right now, there's no real reason to go for dupes because the game is wiping, and they're time gating progressing through the story because you need to get to certain levels, and without dailies and stuff, it's going to be hard to do that. But when the game is an actual official release, I would recommend buying these overall. So the recharge is actually pretty much the same exchange rate that it was on the CN version, but they have a lot of nice things here. So for 20 bucks, you could get pretty close to a pity for a weapon. The weapons work the same way, meaning that if you don't get the legendary the first time, you will get it the second time. So I would say it's pretty good. I think it's pretty shady that after you get a pity on some of the banners that the rate for the pity actually goes up. I think they should just remove that entirely. But they're getting a lot of flack for that, so I'm sure it will be changed. Another nice thing about this version of the game is that you're not bound to the story. When you go through the story, you can actually go to any gameplay mode at any time, and then you can load back into the story, which is really nice because this game actually has pretty much console quality levels on par with the mainline DMC games. So obviously as a mobile game, they were really smart, and they kind of designed the game around like, hey, people might only be playing this like for a half hour a day, and it might not even be like a straight half hour. It might be like 10 minutes at lunch break, maybe 10 minutes on their commute, and then maybe like 10 minutes when they're on the way back. So what they've done is any of the stuff that you can see in here, I can't really show you because I'm done with the story, barring the time gaining. You can go in here and do anything at any time and then go straight back. So if you wanted to do Bloody Palace and then go back to the story and then go to the slots here, you could do that at any time, which is a huge improvement. I felt like the levels were a little bit too long on the 1.0 version, just because, it's a mobile game now. I have a caregiving job where I can play games for like an hour before or in between work I need to do over there. So it doesn't really affect me, but it's really cool that they thought of that because it definitely was a problem. There were some levels towards the end of the campaign of 1.0 where it would take like 20-30 minutes to clear, and it wasn't really clear when the checkpoints were. But now you can pretty much do any of these at any time, which feels really good. So overall, I'd say the game is a pretty objective improvement over 1.0 in every way but the combat. The combat, for what it's worth, is still fun. It's just the problem is, it definitely is dumbed down. There are some problems as well, like, let me see if I can get him to attack. Let me get the gameplay here. The controller stopped working. BlueStacks is a pretty crappy emulator. But anyway, let's go ahead and do it with the mouse. To launch in this game, you need to hold the button down, and to do Helmbreaker, you also need to hold the button down. But it doesn't really feel precise. It feels like a lot of times it won't come out, which is very, very annoying. I feel like they're a little bit too adamant on trying to make things simple. I actually tried playing this on the touchscreen because I got early access to this beta while I was coming back from my vacation, and I didn't have access to Mantis Gamepad Pro, which is a program I use to simulate or emulate controller inputs on touchscreen-only games. Now, the game is supposed to have controller support. They were promising that, but then it doesn't work right now. So I can tell you that playing this game on the touchscreen is awful. It actually feels even worse than trying to play 1.0 with like the much larger moveset on touchscreen, just because you have like more buttons down here at the bottom, and then you also have to tag as well. It just feels completely awful. I feel like they need to just straight up add another attack button, which was the way it worked in 1.0, where you had one button for attacking, and then you had another button mainly for launching. You would use it for like high time Hellbreaker, you would use it for dash attacks and things like that. I feel like they need to add that. It seems like they don't want to add more moves, which I think is the biggest problem with this combat system. However, if they at least made it so that you could manually do the launcher at any time, the combat would feel a lot better. I definitely do feel it is still too stiff as well. I pull out. Sorry, I have to play this with the mouse right now. My controller's not working because BlueStacks is a crap emulator. See how long it takes to cancel. Certain moves take forever to come out. Sometimes it doesn't feel like your high time and Helmbreaker comes out, which is a shame because for a lot of characters it's a very integral part of their moveset. But overall, I'd say outside of the combat, I think that the actual experience, the non-combat experience, is way better than it was on 1.0. They mostly just need to make the combat more responsive. They need to add the second attack button back, and they need to expand the moveset. The game is actually quite fun. I wouldn't say it really plays like Honkai Impact and PGR. I know that's like the main comparison that people are making. I would say it still plays like DMC to a degree, but it's definitely simplified. It's mostly just you really run out of options, and some of the characters don't feel very well designed. Like Force Edge Virgil feels pretty crappy because he's basically just a round trip slave. He can't do much else. He has no other moves. He can't switch weapons. He can't use the summon swords or anything. So a lot of the characters just feel like they're kind of shells of their former selves, which is a problem. I'm hoping that they can fix that in due time. But I'd say that the non-combat experience of the game is an objective improvement. The monetization, the pacing of the game. So far, I haven't had to do a single puzzle, which is nice. 1.0 had some deceptively difficult puzzles, which is really weird for a game like this, where whether you like puzzles or not, they don't really belong in a mobile kind of DMC. Now, obviously, DMC is very known for having puzzles throughout the campaign and stuff. The problem is that you can't have people getting stuck when the game is designed, especially in 2.0, where you can play it for a couple minutes several times a day and make significant progress. It's good that they remove those. Also, replaying chapters, if I back out here, I'll go ahead and show the memory corridor. That's another upgrade that they made over 1.0. Before, you had to play through the whole story again, which was pretty awful, because you had to go through all the puzzles and cutscenes again. What they've done here, like if I go to Chapter 1 here, I'm sorry I can't really show much gameplay because the controller stopped working for some reason. BlueStacks is pretty crappy. What it's doing here is these are essentially all the individual fights that you do while you're playing through the story. So if you go back through here, what it'll do is it'll just give you straight fights, and you'll get awakenings as you go through this. And what those do is those are kind of like the rank upgrades in PGR, where once you get to certain level milestones, you can get like a flat stat boost on your character. So it's actually really fast to go through these, and like I said, you can even do these while you're doing the story as well. I definitely think this is a massive improvement. The levels in the 1.0 were like way too long. It wasn't really clear where checkpoints were, and if you didn't have a lot of time to play in one sitting, it definitely felt very restrictive, whereas this feels pretty good. So I got about a quarter through the game. I don't really think anybody's going to get any farther than probably chapter 6 or 7 because of how time-gated everything is right now. But I just thought I'd do a little overview for it. There's been a lot of people just saying to put the game back to the way it was, which is not something they're going to do. There's a lot of logistic and financial reasons why they're doing this. 1.0 is not sustainable because the monetization was terrible, and they don't really have that many characters to choose from. So they had to monetize the games in other ways, meaning the weapons. In 1.0, what happened was legendary weapons actually gave you different moves. Now, some of them were just fun to use, which isn't a bad thing. You know, it's DMC overall. Not everything is practical to use, but it's fun, and fun and player expression is a big part of DMC. However, some of them were like almost like mandatory to have for just overall utility of using the character, and there was no pity, and the real money to in-game currency exchange rate was pretty bad. All of those things have been fixed. It's actually pretty reasonable to get pretty much everything in this game with like minimal spending, or even a free player if you play diligently. But if you spend like even a little bit of money, it feels like you can get so much more stuff than you could before. A lot of people just want the game to go back to the way it was, or they complain about the combat being dumbed down, and I definitely empathize. It is dumbed down. It is very limited. It feels like the game doesn't have anywhere near as much depth as it did, but everything else about the game is better. So if they actually continue to be receptive to feedback, because that was one of the things that people hated about 1.0, is like, it sucks to spend money on this game. Like, you know, we liked the game and we wanted to spend money on it, but it was just such a crap deal. You didn't get anything near worth what, you know, you were spending. A lot of times you would even get nothing. All of that has been fixed. The pacing has been fixed. Overall, there's a lot more ways to upgrade your character. I'd say a lot of the other things in here, the interface has been cleaned up. The exchange rate for stuff is quite a bit better. And you have Nero in the game, and they said that one of the interesting things they said is that basically they have like no limits. So there might be like you might be able to play like Zero from Mega Man X in this at some point. They're probably going to put like a generic Monster Hunter in here or something. The sky's the limit. I just think my main concern with this game right now is that they should improve and expand the moveset now while they only have like 10 characters in the game, and then that way they'll have a better foundation for future characters. Now, in this game's defense, I also play PGR pretty much every day, and that game kind of had the same problem. A lot of the characters that you get at the beginning, they suck because they're not very technical. They don't have a lot of options, and honestly, most people will tell you, after you've been playing the game for a while, after you stuck with it for a while, it's like, hey, you know, I like this game. I'm probably going to buy like at least a $5 monthly card and play it, you know, at least like 5 days a week. You don't use those characters anymore because there's other ones that are more technical and more fun to play, not even barring power creep. I think what's interesting about this game is that even though there inevitably will be power creep, just because of the combo-based gameplay, it's still going to be fun to use them. And right now, the balancing outside of Virgil mostly is pretty good. The B ranks and A ranks are still useful. There's a lot of synergies with them as well. I think the main thing they need to do is just improve the moveset. So my ideal timeline for this game is that they take several months. We're talking like maybe 4 or 5 months, and they take the feedback, which pretty much is all just around the combat and the optimization. The game does drop frames quite a bit on mobile for some reason, even if you have a powerful phone. Even when you put the settings to low, it drops frames. They need to fix that too, but mostly just need to expand the moveset, and then from there, I think the rest of the game has an amazing foundation, and it's so much better than it was before. They just fixed that one big thing, which is the combat. I could definitely see myself playing this every day along with PGR, which is like my main mobile game right now, and the only other mobile game I'm playing. But I probably won't do too much more of this. I do have the majority of the characters, so if you guys want to see some gameplay, let me know. But I'm not going to bother grinding anymore because all of it's getting wiped. I already spent like 25 bucks on the game, so I'll get like double of that back when the game comes back, which is pretty sick. But going any farther than this is kind of just pointless because it's not going to stick around. But if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to see some gameplay of the characters, these are the characters I have. I am missing just Nivon, Dante, and the other SMG lady. Those are the only characters I don't have. So if you want to see some gameplay with them, let me know. Hope that helps. I just wanted to put out an overview and put out my criticisms as well. I try not to be overly negative. I think that everything but the combat has been vastly improved. They just need to fix that one thing. And I definitely think this will be, like it says, the peak of combat. Thanks for watching.